Morning. Having some technical difficulties here a little bit. So we'll go ahead and get started. Let's give everyone a moment to kind of get rolling over here. Sometimes these devices they don't always do what you expect them to do. But anyway, I digress. We'll go ahead and we'll get rolling over here. So we're starting with chapter 15. We are talking about Parashas Tetzaveh. So the parasha in chapter 15, as we wrap up the book of Exodus, is we're discussing about the impact of Lashon Hara. Okay, and so he starts off that with the Parashas Tetzaveh. He says that the Gemara says in Arachin, it says that the Me'il, the long cloak that the Kohen Gadol wore, okay, it was the cloak that they would wear over the top. So they had an ephod, they had the ephod and they had the Me'il. So they had linen, and then the apron, and then another robe going over the front and back. So there was a lot going on. The ephod was wrapped around it. So this one, it says that the Me'il was there to atone for the sin of Lashon Hara. So the Gemara explains that the Holy One, blessed be He, proclaimed that let something that comes in with sound and atone for those things that make sound, because the bottom of the Me'il were little bells. There was a pomegranate and a bell, a pomegranate and a bell. The question was if it was like a pomegranate and then who else was a bell? Okay. What we actually have found is a bell inside of a pomegranate. Kind of cool. But it was a dispute about which one it actually was. And this is specifically where a person's actions didn't make it better for having spoken Lashon Hara. Meaning you didn't do something that would make your life better, and instead you continue to perpetuate all types of fights. Okay, and so what's going to happen is that he would be smitten with different types of afflictions, okay, like tsuras and so on. Okay, that's what the Gemara says. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the whole parsha, and I still understand why it's connected to this affliction. So the first verse says, "You shall make the Me'il of the ephod completely of techeles." Okay, this is in chapter 28, and it's verse 31. Okay, so it's belted, as we mentioned earlier, by the ephod. The ephod belts it down, and it's made completely out of blue, and the blue is actually wool. Okay, so that's what the verse says. So, why was it all blue? Chafetz Chaim says, because our holy rabbi said, Menachos 89a, we were commanded with one single blue strand. And that one blue strand is a color that represents the sea. And the sea looks like the sky. And the sky looks like the heavenly throne. Which is to say, a person should remember that they will come before judgment before the highest throne in the land. Okay, and so too in this case. And so therefore, it's also taught in the Midrash. The Midrash is Tana de Eliyahu. There's a Tana of Eliyahu is somebody who sat and taught teachings that have been passed down in the name of Eliyahu Hanavi. That Lashon Hara is what's being dealt with. And that goes and stands before the heavenly throne. Because the verse says, it's a pasuk in Tehillim 73:9. It says, "You have placed the heavens upon their mouths, and their tongues walk along the land. So when one wears techeles, that blue, they should know that the words they say are judged up above, and they should be careful for it. Okay, so the idea is that even though it seems like everything is very high, a lot of things are also dropped very low. Okay, so that's just something to consider. Excuse me. Okay. Next verse. Okay, or next part of the verse. You shall make a little what's it called? You shall make a seal at the bottom of the garment. The word used for a seal, to seal the bottom, okay, is called a safa. A safa also means sfatayim, is the lips, but it means that at the bottom part of the me'il, you make this border. Okay, and that should be made from a woven stitch. Okay, the work of a weaver. Which is to say, the Chafetz Chaim explains, that you should recognize that this is, there's a little mouth on this me'il. Okay, and that the mouth itself is the work of a proficient weaver. And he weaves excuse me, and he weaves the two lips of the garment to each other. Okay, and he does that so that way they can't pop open. And it says you shall make it it shall be at the top end. Whew, gee whiz. Sneezing, coughing. Can't win today. So at the neck, you need to make a sealed edge again, so that it can't rip. So it should the edges are sealed, and the opening by the neck should be strong, so it shouldn't tear. Okay, so what does that mean? Rashi explains there, quoted by the Chafetz Chaim, that the fine fabric that's used there has to be folded over. Okay, and it has to be made nicely along the edge. And so, why is it also saying that you need a safa? Right. So, you already said so you have the sahara and the safa. So at the neck you have the sahara, which is it's made a reinforced neck, and along the bottom edge you have another border. You have two things bordering it. Each one differently. So why do you need both? So the reason why is because the top end is made like siryon, like chain armor. Okay, which is to protect you. That a person wears on it to protect himself and to keep him safe, and that he shouldn't be attacked or injured by arrows that are shot at him. And so too everybody else who keeps his mouth shut, that is a protection for him from people who look to start up with him. Because at the very end, a person should be quiet from starting fights. Okay, and since he is not going to respond to these fights, that's the guardianship that we're talking about. Now, if you invest in the fight, okay, you're going to expand the machlokas, right? You're going to expand the overall dispute. And this is going to make it even worse, basically. Because we say that when you start the fight, we already said back in Parshas Mishpatim, that when two people fight, this is back in chapter 21, verse 18, that when two people fight and one strikes the other, whether it's with his fist or with a stone, And so to the Holy One, blessed be He, who looks to protect you by going ahead and giving you some form of protection in this world, as we just mentioned. Okay, back to understanding the next verse. And we make, as the very bottom, we make pomegranates from tacheles as well. And we also make golden bells. And the golden bells are between them, all around. So with the word is besocham, either between them or within them. So it's actually a machlokas about how to translate that. So it's palmon zahav rimon, right? Should be the golden bell and then the pomegranate. At the very edge of the garment is where they shall be. And that's back in our section here, chapter 28, verse 33 and 34. And what's hinting at over here, the Chafetz Chaim says, is that since the rabbis have already stated that this is a Gemara in Chulin, they say that a person who has a specific job, a professional job in this world, that person has a job to make himself completely silent. Okay, so he should be silent even for learning Torah. So that's not what that means. What it means is that a person should go ahead and only say righteous things. And the Gemara is actually citing a specific verse in Tehillim in 58:2 that says that's what you should speak about, only good things and only righteous things. So therefore, every single person every single moment where a person is free, a person should not be on Torah. And Torah should be recited quietly. And the Gemara says this echoes this idea in Eruvin. This is on page 54a. It says that when a person is not able to learn Torah for whatever reason, he should make himself sit quietly. He shouldn't have to fill up the space with air from his mouth. Okay? And through this, a person will see how this connects directly to the very bottom edges of the me'il, of this coat. And that's why they are surrounded by pomegranates and bells, golden bells. So a palmod zahav is a bell that makes a noise. And that's the limud Torah, that's the learning. Okay? And based on the fact that you constantly make this very low noise, if you can't learn, you should draw yourself closely to the behavior of silence. Okay? Which is exactly what they recommend in Maseches Avos in the first chapter, number 16. Rav Shimon Gamliel says, I spent all my days amongst the wise and found nothing better for myself more than quiet. And so that is the hint given to us by the pomegranate, which is next to the bell, which is that one should be like a pomegranate, that you don't hear any noise from the pomegranate. And if you conduct yourself like this, and the Torah is telling us that you'll only be heard when you go to the holy place, right? And that this is the next pasuk over here. So we had 33, 34, now 35. They will only hear the sound when you go to the holy place. So that is the sound of your voice of prayer, and the Torah that you learn goes up before that kisei hakavod, which is not the case if you don't use all of your strength to hold back the bad speech patterns that you create, and include lashon hara in everything that you say. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants him to learn. They shouldn't be including lashon hara in all of his statements. And we've said that already in the very first chapter. And what we say further, that when you leave, you should not be susceptible to death, which is to say that when it comes to leave from this world, a person should not find that his speech pattern. And the Zohar says this very specifically, that that even if his breath is as long as his breath is good and it's not lost, that every single breath that that a person takes, should not be considered wasteful. Okay? Why? Because through every single breath that you take, you are able to get one step closer to eternal life. Okay, because we say that mitzvah is something that you should live by. Okay, and that's the end of Tetzaveh. And I think it's too long to get involved with Metzora right now. Metzora, which also continues to talk about a similar idea. But the idea is that the Me'il means a lot. I think we'll close with that thought. The idea that one should be very careful with what they have to say and to share, and recognize something that goes up to the highest of heavens and has to be judged on the very last day of one's existence. And that if you ignore those signs and signals, you place yourself in a very bad situation. But we'll pick up next time, and we'll have finished Shemos. We'll pick up next time with Tazria Metzora, one of the big discussion points for all of Lashon Hara is talking about the Metzora. So we'll pick up with that next week. Even though I know next Thursday is Turkey Day, we'll probably have an early shiur or an earlier shiur. So we'll be in touch, unless people tell me let's move it to Wednesday. But we can plan to have learning. Same thing. Just because it's Thanksgiving doesn't mean you can't have this year. So we'll talk to everybody next week. Have a great day.